So now with this exploration of sizing and constraints out of the way, I want to get back to making this app a bit more responsive. And for that, we of course already made sure that we have the chart next to the list, but now I want to work on this modal. Now, this actually does also work in landscape mode, but I would say we could use this space a bit better if we are in landscape mode, because we, for example, don't need this long title row here. In addition, of course, we have the problem that right now, if I open my keyboard, I actually can't reach the other inputs. And that therefore is also something we might want to fix. It's also the reason why I'm getting an error here in Visual Studio Code after opening the keyboard here in this landscape view of this modal. Now, first of all, let's make sure that we can open this keyboard and actually reach all inputs. To achieve this, we have to go to New Expense Start, because that is in the end where we do render this form. And in the build method of our New Expense state class here, we can again use media query of context as we did it before, but now not to calculate the available width or height, at least not yet. But instead, on this media query object, we can also access a view insets object. And this is an object that contains extra information about UI elements that might be overlapping certain parts of the UI. For example, if I access view insets bottom here, I get any extra UI elements that are overlapping the UI from the bottom. And that's of course exactly what this keyboard does. It slides in from the bottom and overlaps my UI. So here with media query of view insets bottom, I can get the amount of space taken up by that keyboard. I can then save this in keyboard space or whatever you want to name it. And now we could use that to adjust our padding here and actually add more padding from the bottom if this space is taken up by the keyboard. So we could set the bottom padding here to keyboard space plus 16 so that we always have at least 16 pixels of bottom padding, but we add that extra space that might be taken up by the keyboard. Now, if we do that, we have to remove const though, since edge insets is now calculated dynamically. Now, if you do set the padding like this and you save everything, you'll note that nothing changes though. We still get this error. The reason for that is that we also must make the content of this modal sheet, so this widget tree that is returned by the new expense widget, scrollable, so that we actually can scroll away. Because if you take a look at the screen, of course this must be scrollable. Otherwise we can't reach the other input fields. Therefore, we should wrap this padding widget with another widget. So I'll choose that refactor action and choose the single child scroll view here, which you also saw before in the course already. Now, if you do that and you save everything and reload, you'll see that this looks much better. Now this is scrollable and we can reach all the inputs. Of course, it's still not ideal, but on landscape mode, we'll have to live with that, because we do have that keyboard there, and there is only a limited amount of height left thereafter. It is what it is. But now at least this looks better. Though you will note that if you close the keyboard, the modal sheet now actually does not take up the entire height anymore. And you might be fine with that, but you can also make sure that it does take up the entire height again. By the way, here I'm still getting an error that there is some overflow, but this seems to be some weird behavior or bug, since I can't detect any overflow here. I can reach everything and everything seems to work here, so it looks like this is kind of a buggy error message here. Either way, to make sure that we take up the entire height again, I'll wrap this single child scroll view with another widget. I'll wrap it with a sized box to be precise. Because on that sized box I can set the height, and I'll set it to double infinity to make sure that this takes up as much space as it can get. And with that, if we save this and reload, I get this full screen modal again. Still scrollable, but full screen. And this strange error message, which I'm going to ignore here. But that is how we could make sure that we can always reach all the contents, no matter if we view this application here in landscape mode or as before in portrait mode. There, of course, it also still works as it should.